Hello everyone, and we're back again, and I apologise for the end of the last video, by the way, because apparently it sounded like the exorcism of Emily Rose if you saw my Alistair Overeem video, so I apologise for that. I hope that this doesn't happen now and I sound like the exorcist, and yes, I'm in a tap out t-shirt, but I am not one of those guys. I am not that guy in the gym that you see that's like doing this. You know those guys in the gym doing these like little knees in the air, then they go to the punching bag and they're like hopping around da 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 da. Yeah, and then they're like, I train that UFC, bruh. That's not me. I am not that guy, but I do like the t-shirt. It was cheap. I saw it for £7. I said, why not get it? Anyways, what we're going to talk about, BJ Penn. And it's come out now that BJ Penn, after almost a year away from the fighting again, after his Rory McDonald fight, BJ Penn is coming back and he will be fighting Frankie Edgar in the third fight that they have had, coaching the Ultimate Fighter. And the big news of all of this is that this will be a fight at 145. And I heard this yesterday from a friend at work, and I was like, really? At featherweight? And they said, yep, check it out when you get in. And no, sure enough, seen the interview with Dana White, and he said, no, this will be at 145 pounds. BJ Penn will go down to 145 pounds. This isn't going to be a thing where he just does the one fight and is away for a year. He apparently has worked on a new deal or signed a new deal with the UFC, and it looks like 145 pounds will be his new home. And this is a very interesting topic, and I really want to know what people think about that. BJ Penn, let's just clarify something. I don't hate BJ Penn. I'm sure on here at times people have gotten the impression that I do. BJ Penn is one of my favourite fighters. I love watching him fight, but he frustrates me in the same way that Rampage and Frank Mir frustrate me, in the sense that these are guys with natural gifts that have coasted on their natural gifts and haven't trained them and fine-tuned them to the point where they could just kill everybody in their weight class. And BJ Penn really is, of the three, the biggest offender, because I have not seen a guy with those kind of gifts like that he has had, where he can fight guys a bit bigger than him, fight guys a bit smaller than him. The flexibility that he showed and had naturally, the ability he had on the ground as a jiu-jitsu guy, the striking, even his wrestling for a guy that's not actually a wrestler or coming from a wrestling background. He's just got so much great natural talent, and you put that together in a award-winning formula where he actually is a very entertaining guy to watch. And he's one of those guys that is a fighter. He comes to fight. He's not someone that's just going to hold on to the leg and hit the end of the rib and, let's work, do that. This is a guy that comes to take you out. And I think that has been BJ's biggest problem, really, is not fine-tuning himself, and I believe that is why he's lost the fights that he has lost. And I also think that if he was smart and strategic about going to 170, he could have won some fights. But that weight class now, the skill level has increased, and not just the skill level, but the guys at 170 are bigger now than what they were, way back. And you look at the size of a guy like a Johnny Hendricks when he's walking around, and a Rory McDonald when they're walking around, and I'm thinking, fuck, these guys could probably fight at middleweight if they wanted to, really. Well, Rory in particular. And you just look at these guys that are in that weight class, and you can see now that BJ is really dwarfed by that. And he came back, fought Rory McDonald, and I kind of accepted that fight as BJ Penn's last fight. A lot of people said the Nick Diaz fight, I was like, he'll probably fight one more time. He fought Rory, and I kind of accepted that as the end of BJ Penn. And then I'd heard all kinds of different things, that BJ was going to be fighting, BJ was retiring, they don't know. And then BJ Penn came out and said he'd be training with the Marinovic brothers, the guys that really got him into great shape, for Kelly Florian and for Diego Sanchez. And I always felt that had they met earlier, BJ would have been completely unstoppable, because they will push him. And he's got that natural talent, but they will push it right out of him and force it out of him, where he's a killer. He already is a killer anyways. But I think that was a big mistake when he left them. And a lot of people have always said that he likes to dictate his own camp, and that's another problem. And now he's gone, at 155 he was the king, and now you're asking me what I think about him fighting Frankie Edgar for the third time. The first fight they had was very close, and I know some people picked BJ. The second fight was not close at all. I watched that fight with a hangover. You can go and see that video if you want. You see me with a hangover and no sleep talking about that fight, and I said that Frankie won that fight. And I think that Frankie could beat him again. I think Frankie's a little bit quicker, a bit stronger. The wrestling really helps him. He's got guys that, he's got some quickness at 145 and at 155, and he's very tough, and he's been fighting very consistently against very deep and heavy competition, and I just think that edges Frankie out over BJ. Now, do I think there would be any difference at 145? Who knows? Do I think BJ Penn should be fighting at 145? Again, who knows? That question will be answered when he, fights Frankie Edgar. I'm still shocked that he's fighting there, because now when you think about it, this is a guy that has fought in almost, I think, every weight class now. I'm sure when he porked up on burgers, he fought at like heavyweight or light heavyweight. I heard that he even wanted to fight Andrei Arlovski at one point. I know he's fought at welterweight and lightweight, and maybe at 145 that would force him to get into better shape, because in theory you think he's got to do a lot of cardio, a lot of high intensity training to get his body there, and obviously cut the weight and everything. And I think that he would be an interesting addition at 145. Now, the other side of that is that people see this as you see guys when they've not made the most of their careers, or when there's something not working and the tail keeps happening, it's not working, and then they keep trying to change things up, whether it's go to a new camp, whether it's go on this new radical diet, whether it's go down to another weight class, then to another weight class, then to another weight class, then to another weight class, and try and return to that former glory. And in some ways it almost feels like this is happening with BJ Penn, and that's what some people have said. And I know a lot of people who think that BJ Penn is done now, really, and he should just retire. And a lot of people are saying, well, no, he shouldn't, and they want to see him fight again. And I kind of think, I don't know, I kind of think somewhere in the middle. I watched that Roy McDonald fight and felt this isn't a weight class he should be fighting at. That's what I thought. Maybe that might be different at featherweight. And if he does beat Frankie Edgar, is BJ Penn back? Well, you could say that, and it does make things highly interesting at that weight class. And I think in that respect, 145 could really do with the boost there. I know actually that this was supposed to be Faber and Edgar, and they were supposed to coach The Ultimate Fighter. But I think for TV it's better if you've got two guys that have a rivalry, and BJ Penn can sell a fight like no other, and actually sell a beef like no other. And I think that 145 could really do with that excitement outside of Jose Aldo. And I think it's a good boost for that weight class. Will he be the Randy Couture of that weight class? The guy that goes down and then, shocks everybody? I mean, that would be interesting. I mean, if you think about it, Aldo is running out of opponents, and he's pretty much cleaned out that division. He destroyed Mike Brown, and I mean destroyed that guy. He beat up Uriah Faber, just fucking ripped apart that motherfucker's legs. Like, Faber was in pain. That was a hard fight to watch. He has gone out there and he just destroyed Chad Mendes. He, had a very close fight with Frankie Edgar. He fought, oh god, who did he fight? Oh god, it's gone from my head. The Toronto show 2 years ago. He's beaten a lot of these guys, and it's like, who's the next challenge? Who's the next challenge? And Anthony Pettis seemed to be that guy, and I think he will be that guy eventually. But I think having, if BJ wins, BJ Penn and Jose Aldo would be a very interesting fight. Will it be what I thought it would have been a few years back, like in 2010, when Aldo was the king at 145 and still is now, and BJ was seeming to go through a career revitalization after he'd beaten Kenny Florian and destroyed Diego Sanchez. Had that fight happened then, I would love to have seen it then. I think that BJ has to rebuild himself, but I think a lot of people have accepted the fact that BJ isn't in his prime anymore, and maybe that is what hurts the specialness of the fight. Either way, I wish him the best because he's a great fighter, a guy that I loved watching fight. I mean, look, I went all the way to Kilburn, an area I frequent a lot actually when I'm with the other half. I went all the way to Kilburn to get this BJ Penn figure because it was the last of its kind. And for me to get to Kilburn takes ages, and I've got about 4 TK Maxes around me, and I went to that one because I wanted to get a BJ Penn figure. And I'm a huge BJ Penn fan, and while I was at it, I also got Chuck Liddell as well. But the fact is, I love BJ Penn as a fighter, and I love seeing him, and I want to see him do what's best for him. And for me, maybe he can revitalise himself, maybe he can be reborn at 145. I would love that, that would be a great story, but do I think it's going to happen? Only time will tell. I want to know what people think though. What do people think of BJ Penn? Do they think that this is a great idea? Do you want to see him stay at 145? Do you think that he's going to have this rebirth at 145? I think it benefits him in the sense that he won't be the smallest guy in his division now. He'll actually have some size, and he actually has to go down quite a bit to get there, and that might help him, whereas at 170 it wasn't the case. And in a sense, maybe that might help him, but do I think that will make the big difference? Who knows? But do people out there think that? Do you think that this is going to be a big difference maker for BJ Penn fighting at 145? Do you think he's going to be a phoenix from the ashes of 170 into 145? Do you think that if him and Aldo fought, if he beats Edgar, if him and Aldo fight, do you think that he would beat Jose Aldo? What about him versus Korean Zombie? Those are great fights. Anyways, guys, I'm going to stop. Let me know what you think. And also, imagine Pettis and BJ Penn. That would be phenomenal. Anyways, guys, you let me know what you think. Hopefully I'm not sounding like The Exorcist, and I will do another video in about 2 minutes. Bye.